All set? All right. I'd like to call to order the November 18th Lowell Historic Board meeting. We have a couple items on our public hearings agenda tonight. The first one is item DLHD-25-22, 169.1 and 169.2 Bridge Street, the former Massachusetts Cotton Mills Boiler House and Main Powerhouse. This is an application for a historic permit by the Massachusetts Mills 3 Limited Partnership for partial demolition, exterior rehabilitation, and associated site improvements. And I'll point out that we're reviewing this not only pursuant to the Lowell Historic District Act, but this is also, we're also conducting plan approval under Section 9.6 of the Lowell zoning ordinance, which is a little bit different from what we typically review under. Would the applicant like to step forward and introduce yourselves and review the project?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to all. For the record, my name is John Geary of Geary & Geary LLP, 32 Church Street, Lowell, Mass. Here tonight representing the applicant, Mass Mills 3 Limited Partnership. And with us tonight, we have Kayla Lesson from Mullins Management. We have Chris D'Andrea of Mullins Management. We have Jim Steedle, the architect. And we have David White from Hancock Associates, the engineer for the project. David, as I'm making my initial remarks here, David will set up his plans. Steve, as usual, did a thorough job of with his memo detailing the proposal to the board, but I'll take a few minutes and I'll summarize the project for the board in any event. In advance of tonight's hearing, we have provided the board with a site plan. We have provided architectural plans, which include elevations, floor plans. We have also provided plans that show selective demolition of both buildings. In order to allow this project to move forward, we needed to propose that selective demolition. And we've also supplemented the application materials just recently with revised floor plans for the boiler house building. Those plans initially came through with proposing 55 units in that building. We are now proposing 65 units, so we increased the unit count by 10 in that building. We've also, since Friday, submitted the stormwater management report through Steve to the stormwater team. As the chairman mentioned, this is an application which involves a request for a major historic permit pursuant to Chapter 566 of the Acts of 1983 and Section 9.6 of the city zoning ordinance, which governs development within the downtown smart growth overlay district. Subject property is a part of the former Massachusetts Cotton Mills complex and located at 169.1 Bridge Street, which is the location of the main powerhouse building, and 169.2 Bridge Street, which is the location of the boiler house building. Both buildings were constructed around 1909, so they're both well over 100 years old. Both are located within the downtown historic district as well. The applicant's proposing to repurpose the main power building by converting that to 30 residential units and converting the boiler house building into 65 units, so for a total of 95 units. The applicant's also proposing that 20% of the units in each building will be restricted for affordable rental units. So that will equate to 6 units in the main power building and 13 units in the boiler house building for a total of 19 units which will be rented at 80% of the AMI or below. The project, as you all know, is located at the confluence of the Merrimack and Concord rivers. Both buildings have been vacant for quite some time now. They are the last undeveloped historic mill buildings along the Merrimack River in Lowell, and they are a high priority location within the city. As mentioned, the proposed development includes 80% market rate, 20% affordable units, which matches the local need and desire for affordable and market rate units within the city, and specifically within the downtown area. The applicant will work with the city's Department of Planning and Development to ensure that all of the affordable restrictions are in place before the project gets off the ground. It should also be noted that the rehabilitation of the main power building will eventually allow that river pedestrian walkway to open up at some point. Right now, as we all know, it's closed because of the dangers that are there, but eventually the redevelopment of this property will allow that to open. In terms of the redevelopment history associated with the Mass Mills complex, there have been 3 different phases so far over the course of many years that have resulted in just over 350 units. This 4th phase, which will be known as Mass Mills 4, once completed, will amount to about, I think it's 448 units when it's all said and done. The last 2 buildings, as I said, have been vacant for quite some time now. Until recently, a hydroelectric company owned the rights to use that main power building, but in 2021, the applicant finally took control of that building and also had control of the boiler house building. So the applicant's been working towards this point of being able to submit this proposal to you tonight. One of the main obstacles in getting here, however, was providing safe fire access for the fire department to get here. That was quite a challenge, but the development team and the fire department worked closely together. We were able to come up with a scheme that allows for the demolition of a portion of both buildings, but that ultimately provides safe fire access to the fire department, and they were satisfied with that solution. David and Jim will be able to, in their remarks, go over that demolition with you in a little bit more detail. In terms of parking, there is no parking requirements, and we're not offering any parking with the project. The applicant intends to finance the project through a plethora of financing options, including local, state, federal funding, in addition to equity from the applicant developer. In terms of other historic approvals, both buildings received approvals for Part 1 and Part 2 from the National Park Service for the National Parks for the Historic Preservation Certification, and we have just recently submitted a Part 2 amendment to allow for the selective demolition of each building. So that will be under review soon. In terms of local approvals, as I mentioned, the site is located within the downtown Lowell Smart Growth Overlay District and being proposed as a project under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40R. So this board has the overall approval. You are the plan approval authority for this project as well as issuance of the historic permit. We are also required to go to the Conservation Commission because of the proximity to the river, of course. In terms of the project schedule, so the hope is that we get through all permitting by late winter, early spring, and that from that point we'll move towards finalizing all financing sources in hopes of being able to close on financing sometime in June of 2025. The main power building will be the first of the 2 buildings to be tackled, and we expect that will obviously include the structural work so that the river walk can be reopened at some point. The expectation is that the main power building will be completed in December of 2026, and the boiler house building following shortly after that in June of 2027. We've also had the opportunity to review the department head comments, which Steve has circulated. So in terms of those comments, the economic development team notes that it's very supportive of the application and thinks it's a tremendous opportunity for the city. The engineering comments, they had mentioned that they want to see a few things in the site plan. We'll go through that in a few minutes, including the swept path analysis that was performed with the fire department. Fire department notes that they are satisfied with the access for fire safety. The stormwater team would like to see a stormwater report. We've submitted that. We're confident that we can work through any issues or concerns that come up with regard to that report. And the city's transportation engineer would like to see a transportation management plan. So to that end, we have hired Jeffrey Dirk of Vanessa & Associates to perform that transportation demand management plan. We have been working with him through a draft. We expect to have that draft shortly, and we expect that draft will provide for on-site bicycle storage, will provide a welcome packet for new residents to the property, which will provide them with the public transportation schedules, whether that be LRTA, MBTA. It will provide other alternative modes of transportation. It will provide information for the local municipal garages for parking alternatives if residents do have cars. So we expect to have that transportation demand management plan soon. I know the city, from past experience, has worked with Vanessa & Associates several times, and usually it's a seamless process. So ultimately, we don't have any concern, oh, actually, there were a couple concerns about the stormwater and the wastewater departments wanted to see utility plans, so we're obviously developing those, and that will not be an issue. Ultimately, we don't have any concerns about any of the comments from any of the department heads. So at this point, I'll turn the presentation over to David. He can go through the site plans, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Is this a good spot for me?
The one thing I would ask is, could you please take the microphone, because that's not for amplification in here, but for the TV.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So, hi, I'm David White with Hancock Associates. I'm a civil engineer. I worked on the engineering design on this project. So, site plan, we're working on the boiler house and main power building, which is directly next to the Riverwalk. And it's at the confluence of the Merrimack River and the Concord River. On the site, we will be removing a small portion of each building to provide fire access and overall safety for the site. But to provide that fire access, we're removing about 10 parking spaces and then therefore adding about 5 more over in this small parking area over here to the left. Here is the old swept path plan, where you can see that the fire truck could not make it past this kind of pinch point between the boiler house and the picker building. The fire department said that they need access to this courtyard, and they also need a small cutout here to provide access to the roofs of both buildings. And then here's the site plan with the swept path plan, or the swept path plan with the cutouts, which allows the fire truck to come all the way through into the courtyard, and so the fire department can, protect people. Here's a utility plan, which I don't believe you guys have seen yet. Because we're increasing impervious area on site, we do have to provide some stormwater storage over here, and we'll reuse the existing storm scepter on site has enough capacity for the increase in stormwater. We'll also provide water and sewer utilities for both buildings. The utility punch-outs have not been completely established yet because we have not brought the MEP on board yet. Here is the landscape plan. It's pretty minimal because we need the fire truck to be able to drive over these grass pavers onto the site. So generally most of the plantings are along the main power building, and then generally we'll have grass areas over by the boiler building. Finally, we have the erosion control plan. Big things are we're going to have inlet protection at the existing catch basins. We'll have straw walls and silt fence along the Riverwalk. And finally, we'll have mesh netting along the buildings, along the Riverwalk to protect the rivers and the Riverwalk. Now I'm going to hand off to Jim Steedle.
I'm James Steedle, Russell Scott Steedle and Capone Architects in Cambridge. I must apologize, I don't have my drawings with me. They're actually on the way. She's running a few minutes late, but it's been a hectic day for me. I started out on the Cape, so it's been a little crazy. But I will talk to you about what we plan on doing. One of the things we wanted to do is make sure that this project included all the amenities as far as handicap. And because one of the things I noticed is that we're a little light on some of the handicap, and one of the things we did is that there's going to be a studio handicap unit, two more one-bedroom handicap units, and 3 more two-bedroom handicap units, which will actually bring us up to 5% in all unit types. Because right now we're a little under in some of the larger units. So by adding these units, we'll actually have 5%. Through all unit types, which we don't have right now So Has anyone here been inside either of those buildings or understand what they're like? It's an empty shell. The main power is 3 stories high. There's nothing in there except a minor little mezzanine at one end. So what we're actually doing is building a building within the building. So we're going to be adding floors at all 3 levels within main power to build up the apartments. And then the boiler house is a little different. It has a coal chute at what would be the 4th floor. And so we're actually demolishing a small portion of that and building 2 floors on top of that and 3 floors under that to make the 5-story building. And one of the other things in the 5th floor, because it has very deep roof trusses, they're about 10 feet tall, we're actually putting loft apartments at the 5th floor level so that those units, we can get more units that way by making a 1-bedroom unit down below with a 2nd bedroom up within the roof structure between those trusses, which are at every bay. I'm trying to think if there's something. I wanted to talk about what happened with the cutout of main power. One of the things that the fire department wanted to do was come all the way to the river. But we talked to them about making this one like 10-foot wide section and keeping it so that the facade along the river would have occupied spaces throughout the entire length of the project. Didn't want to have a false wall that you could see through with just openings, but there's going to be a bedroom in this little 10-foot sliver that's going to be occupied just like all the other windows along the front of the building. As far as historically, all the existing masonry openings are being kept. No added masonry openings are going to be along either river front. We're going to be putting in new windows that are mimicking exactly what was there before. We did discover some existing windows in main power behind the block infill. So we're able to determine that they did have the divided lights. So we'll be using divided lights throughout the existing masonry openings along the river, both river fronts. Main power, the way it's built, there's a corridor runs along this side, so we don't need to create more openings along the inner courtyard side of main power because it doesn't have any openings as it is now, and we'll just keep it that way. There's a main, very large opening, which will be the main entrance to the building. Along this side of the boiler house, there are some openings, but not enough to create bedroom windows and living room windows. So in that case, we're creating windows within the existing recessed brick openings to allow for apartments along that side. One of the things I want to note about this cutout and this little sliver that makes this opening from 10 feet to 20 feet is that most of it is actually blocked by picker building. When you come down this roadway, you won't even see that slice out of the boiler house. You'll see a little bit of what's missing here. But one of the things is this little section here, the 2-story section, we kept enough of it that you'll get the sense of what the main power looked like on that end. And the way we're treating this, all these cuts, is the same way we treated the cut on picker. It's going to have the green tone green tone cement clapboards that are currently on this end of picker. So it'll all be the same type of material as you have now. Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jim. So in summary here, give me just a second. What we are proposing will allow these last 2 mill buildings to be restored, fully restored, and provide housing within the city. The restoration will be done in a way that is consistent with the design standards and in compliance with Section 9.6 of the city zoning ordinance. We meet the goals of the City of Lowell Forward Plan by creating new housing, both affordable and market rate housing. And we will eventually bring revenue into the city in terms of fees and permitting costs associated with the project, hiring contractors to work on the site for over the couple of years that the site work will be ongoing. And eventually, it will involve significant real estate tax revenue to the city, which is very important in terms of helping to offset the burden of the residential property owners within the city. So ultimately here, we feel that we meet all of the standards for issuance of the permit for both the historic permit and the plan review, and we're respectfully requesting approval this evening. But we're all here. We're happy to answer any questions or address any concerns that the board may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. At this point, I'll open the floor to anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the project. If so, please step forward. Second call for anyone who wishes to speak in favor. Third call. Okay. If there's anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this project, please step forward. Second call. Third call. Okay, well, that will close the public comment section and open it up for board questions and discussion.
I have a question regarding the new structure, the building within the building. It's interesting. I'm glad to hear that the historic trusses are being retained. By the way, are they structural steel, presumably? The
Yes,
trusses?
they're structural steel.
Okay. And what is the structural system for the new building within the building?
It's like, well, it'll be stud construction, just like, because we're building 3 stories high, we can simply do wood studs 3 stories high, just like a typical building within a building.
I see. Okay.
And because of that 4th level in the boiler house, that becomes a platform for the upper 2 floors, and then we build the lower 3, come up to that level.
Okay. Okay. So you said too that there will be rooms between the trusses or some of the trusses. Is that correct?
Yes, there'll be loft rooms.
Okay.
So it's like the units on the 5th floor will have a stair up to that loft area between. Each one will have a bedroom between a set of trusses.
Mm-hmm. I assume that these are in the architectural drawings that are on the way. Okay.
Got a text she's 5 minutes away.
So finally, just wondering, will the trusses be visible to anyone inside the building, or?
We're working on that detail. The question is, because we have to have tenant separation, we have to do something to keep, the fire from going from unit to unit.
Right, right.
So we're figuring out how best to run that wall up to the roof and still allow the trusses to be expressed within those units.
Okay, right.
So we may have to, we want to show that the trusses are there, whether it's half in the walls and protruding out or whatever.
Okay.
We're going to be working on that detail.
Thank you.
Hi, I just have a question. Are there any sustainability goals for the project?
We intend to have the HVAC system as sustainable as possible. One of the problems with making it fully sustainable is the historic requirements to maintain the exterior wall as is. So we can't super insulate, for example, the exterior walls to get to that level of insulation, but the windows will be as good as we can make them in order to keep the energy costs down.
And what about the actual walls of the facade from the interior? I mean, how would you?
They'll be exposed brick as they are now.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello. I have a couple of details questions for you. One question I have, and I'm not sure if I have this right. So, to gain access for the fire trucks, you have to move some parking into what's now kind of a courtyard. So that's That's a little bit of a bummer because you are losing some green space there.
Correct.
Are you losing any trees, and do you plan to add trees if so?
I don't believe there are any trees in that courtyard currently.
And you're thinking that the newer courtyard space that's kind of over by this smokestack will kind of balance that out?
Yeah. Yes.
And then something I just wanted to clarify for myself. So you're not adding any access from the Riverwalk. So this like long stretch of the Riverwalk between, right now there's an access point at the boot mills, and then there's an access at the very end of Mass Mills, like after the corner, and there's not going to be any access before that.
Hi, my name is Kayla Lesson, Mullins Management. Yes, we're not adding any additional pedestrian access to the Riverwalk through the buildings. The elevation grade is quite different. Also, I think it's just not going to be part of this project. My understanding is there's still a city-owned lot behind what we call Mass Mills 2 next to Bridge Street, and that is my understanding that will one day be a ramp down to the Riverwalk, but that is under city purview.
Interesting. Just curious. There was no like wrong answer there. And then you brought up parking. Really just kind of curious. Are you planning to maintain the parking spots that are available to the current buildings, but only the new building doesn't get parking spaces?
Hi, yes, again. We will be maintaining access to parking on site. We will also be maintaining access to parking for the affordable units at no charge. We have been exploring with management about starting to institute a charge for one spot per resident, and we are hoping that we get some relief in that way. But we are going to maintain definitely affordable access to the spots as has been discussed in previous phases.
Yeah, really complicated issue. Certainly, the last thing we would want is for parking to be the real reason that affordable housing didn't get built when lots of people in affordable units don't even need parking. So I do appreciate a thoughtful angle there. I was just kind of curious about whether, about how existing residents were going to be integrated into expansion. Just a comment. Personally, it's really thrilling to see more housing being built. There's really nothing more exciting than a historic building that's been just sitting there, literally starting to fall apart, have a useful life, and there's nothing that the city needs more than housing, and especially affordable housing. So I'm really excited to see this project moving forward, and I know it represents a lot of long-term investment in that location. So I think that's very exciting. I appreciate the eye to keeping some units affordable. And I do think that's really important for Lowell.
And I share your excitement. As a lifelong resident of the city, I've traveled over the Hunts Falls Bridge and that portion of the boulevard hundreds of times, and those two buildings catch your eye. Maybe because of the condition they're in, but because I think more so because of the potential of those buildings. And I think with this project, we're achieving the most potential out of those two buildings. Can't wait to see it get done.
I just want to add, it is a remarkable site, the confluence of the Merrimack and Concord rivers. It's
Sure is.
kind of like one of the signature sites in Lowell. I did have a question to Attorney Geary again about the permits, about the National Park Service. Have they weighed in on this?
With regard to, we've submitted Part 1 and Part 2 for the certifications, and it's been approved for both. We filed an amendment to allow for the demolition of, selective demolition of both buildings, and that's underway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One of our board members is calling in remotely. Yvonne, do you have any comments or questions you'd like to raise at this time?
Thanks, Jeff. Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm no real questions, just more like a comment. DPD's been working closely with the folks at Lowell and the fire department to try to ensure we could come to a solution that made sense and allowed the development to move forward. It's been complicated and has taken quite a lot of work by many parties. But I think the fact that, Mullins is in front of us today and moving forward is a real testament to their capacity to move a project like this forward. So, we're really excited. PCD certainly is very excited to see this moving forward. Obviously, with the Riverwalk literally attached to the building, we're eager to see the development underway and to see that site kind of brought back in line. So nothing but sort of positive comment and feedback about the project itself and the team. I have a lot of confidence that Mullins will be able to pull off another successful phase of this project.
Ms. Shivani. Carrie, anything to bring up that you have?
Thanks. I have no questions, just as a downtown resident, very happy to see this, brought to life. We need the housing. We need that site to look, in keeping with the rest of the beautiful historic downtown. So this is a huge investment, and the plans are thorough, and any question I usually ask applicants, you've answered in your materials, so thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. I had a question related to the boiler house. There is a metal frame structure on the roof that I don't know if it's original to it or if it was a later addition, but it's certainly a kind of a character-defining element of the building. I don't know what kind of condition that's in. Did you explore incorporating that element into the design at all, or having a floor of housing added that kind of represents that element above the roof line?
Well, I've actually been up on that roof, and that structure is in very sad shape, unfortunately. There's really nothing you can do with it besides take it down, because it's ready to fall down. All the supporting beams are just totally rotted out. So, I mean, this is what it would look like along the river without that head house.
Okay. Could you also clarify, I'm not sure where the smokestack fits into this, if that's under different ownership, or if that's part of if that is being repaired and rehabilitated as part of this project? I didn't see anything in the plans or the project description that spoke to that.
The smokestack is going to stay. As part of the Phase 3 picker project, there was some reinforcement done at the base of the tower, and right now it seems to be in good shape. It may need some repointing at some point, but right now we have no intention of doing anything with it.
Okay, but you have done a fairly recent evaluation of its condition and stability.
I haven't personally done that, but we will have the structural engineer take a look at it as part of this project, since it is attached to the building.
Right, right. And then I just had a kind of a detailed question related to the site plan, or a couple related to that. I didn't see a detail for the grass pavers that you're proposing that would enable the fire trucks to come across, but also allow for a green space look.
Yeah, it was actually on the turning plan. Yeah, it's called it's True Grid grass pavers, and I believe they can handle HS 20 loads.
So it's like a concrete grid, more or less, with...
It's a plastic grid that's reinforced by the dirt that's within it, and then the grass grows in that dirt. Okay.
So that plastic is sufficient to support the weight of the...
Yes. Yeah, we've used them on other projects, and these pavers don't deal with loads often. So, cars are driving over them all the time. There might be questions, but grass should grow in pretty strong and hold up the fire truck.
Right, okay. I don't know which manufacturer you're using for this and what gauge plastic's being proposed, but I have seen some of this used in other locations where that plastic has started to degrade over time and creates an issue of maintenance and having to be replaced. So I would urge you to look at something that is something that's sustainable from sustainability standpoint, but also one that's durable, that can last.
Right. We can look into it.
I mean, this will be in the shade, so there probably shouldn't be a lot of degradation from
UV rays.
UV rays at least. So that will certainly work to your benefit, for sure.
Okay.
Also, I understand that you're proposing to show an outline of the sections of the building that are being removed. Can you speak to that detail a little more?
Yeah, it will be the same paver pattern as what we did with the Picker building. So right now, where the Picker building was, there's this outline of brick pavers that runs along that edge, and then where we're cutting out these buildings, it'll be the same exact detail.
Okay, so it'll match that detail. Okay, good. We can do that. All right.
One additional thing is when we do take down the section of the main power up against the boiler house, there are some features that we're going to leave in place. There'll be, where the wall used to be, there'll be a protruding section of brick for each of the walls, where also this mezzanine floor has a concrete beam embedded into that brick. So we'll leave that as well. So when you're looking at this end of the boiler house, you'll see the vertical outline of the main power that disappeared as well.
Okay, I have a question. I know you said that you haven't brought MEP on board as yet. And when you do you have a plan to sort of mitigate the visibility of the rooftop units? Even though, I mean, it's a historic building, I'm just looking at the facade right now, and I mean, it's a beautiful building. But, sometimes, rooftop units, as far as where you're viewing the building from, sometimes it sort of detracts, from that sort of architectural language. So, I mean, are you planning to have like a screen or just have a way to sort of hide those rooftop units?
There is a parapet on the building as it is now. It's about 2 feet high.
Okay.
The type of units we're going to be putting on the roof are similar to your home condenser units.
Yeah.
There'll be a farm of them. Actually, see the roof plan. So, actually, you can. This is actually through the main power, but there'll be there's a slight parapet.
Sure.
And we are keeping all of them on the inboard side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
You can see. So this would be main. So there'll be like a row of them all along the inboard side, and they're so those are about this high, and the parapet's about this high. So I would imagine you'd have to get pretty far away to see them.
Yeah. No, good point. No, thank you.
I would also point out that one of Steve's conditions is approval of all rooftop design, rooftop plans. So that's in one of the conditions as well.
Any other questions or comments from the board? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the project, subject to the conditions as laid out in Steve's memo.
I'll second.
And just to clarify, do we need, given that we have two areas of approval here, do we need two separate motions, or are they, can be covered by one?
That's going to be covered in one permit,
Okay, I just want to be clear on that.
with a whole bunch of conditions.
All right. Yeah, it is a laundry list. All right, thank you for the motions. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Yvonne? Are you there, Yvonne?
Hi, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself.
Okay, just wanted to get you on the record. Great, thank you very much. Good
Thank
luck
you.
with the
Thank you.
project.
We
This is very
appreciate your
exciting.
time.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, the next item on our public hearing agenda is item ASND-25-01, 64 Clitheroe Street. Application for a historic permit by Tewksbury Village Condominium LLC for construction of one single-family home on an existing vacant lot pursuant to the Lowell Historic District Act. Would the applicant like to step forward and introduce yourself and present the project?
Hi, how are you? My name is Stephen Pluff. I live at 147 Belmont Ave in Lowell. I own the two lots in question, and to my right is the gentleman that's purchasing them from me. So we are here tonight respectfully requesting approval from the board for the to build two single-family residences on the lots themselves. And that's it. As far as I know, the drawings have been submitted for a couple of weeks now.
Yes, yeah, they were in a packet for review.
Okay. Yeah. So beyond that, I guess we would ask how that went, and and if there are any other additional comments on the drawings themselves, or whether or anything else regarding the construction that we could discuss.
Okay.
We'd be open to do so.
All right. Is there anyone here in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Second call? Third call? Is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to this proposal? Second call? Third call? All right, we'll close the public comment section and open up for board discussion and questions. Anyone? I did have one question about, at the corner of this lot along the sidewalk, there's an existing stone wall.
Yep.
Is that going to be retained as part of this project?
Yes.
There will be, okay. And are there any repairs that are needed to that?
No.
That will be undertaken as part of this, or?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, no, we are planning to go under that wall with sewer and water, so we just need to be careful.
Okay.
But it is in really nice shape. So.
Yeah, I was really happy to see that you're planning to preserve that as part of the project, because that is a real character-defining element in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, it really makes the lot kind of quaint and nice, so
Right,
it adds some charm to it, so yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
Well, I said earlier that there's nothing more thrilling than a historic building being rehabbed. But second only to that is an empty lot becoming housing, I think is really wonderful to see. We love to see nothing becoming something. And we appreciate your working with us to make sure it fits in with the character of this really beautiful neighborhood. But we're really happy to see this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it is a nice neighborhood.
Giovanni, any comments or questions?
No, this one is pretty straightforward.
Yep. Okay. If there's no further questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I can do it.
Gary?
I'd like to move approval of the historic permit for, 64 Clitheroe Street, subject to the conditions outlined in the historic board meeting notes.
Second.
And you're familiar with those conditions?
Yes.
Are they outlined? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Giovanni?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
All right.
Thank
motion
you.
Passes. We'll now open up the public hearing for the adjacent lot, ASND-25-02, 52 Wyman Street. Application for a storm permit by the same applicant, Tewksbury Village Condominium LLC, for construction of a single-family home. Do you wish to speak, have anything to say about this particular or building?
There's nothing really any different. You know, quite honestly, it's the same story.
Okay, understood. Again, we'll go through the same process, given that this is a public hearing. Anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Second call for comments. Third call. Anyone here to speak in opposition to this proposal? Second call. Third call. All right, we'll close the public hearing. Any other comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion. On you, Carrie. First is on.
I'd like to move approval of the historic permit for 42 Wyman Street, subject to the conditions as outlined in the board meeting notes.
Just to clarify, that's 52 Wyman.
52.
52 Wyman, yeah.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Giovanni?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you very
Congratulations.
much
Good
to
luck
the
with the
board.
project.
We appreciate your consideration.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that concludes the public hearing section of our agenda. Next item is approval of the minutes from September 9th, 2024. Does anyone have any comments or proposed edits for those minutes that you'd like to propose? Otherwise, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I can't do this one. 'Cause
Motion to accept the minutes from our previous meeting.
Thank you, Ray.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Aye.
All right, we have a number of items under other business. I hope everyone's had a chance to at least take a look at that before the meeting. Anything that you'd like to highlight to us, Steve?
Well, again, as usual, everything is here for informational purposes, and it was quite the list this month with lots of things going on here.
Great.
I guess, I mean, does anything stand out at you that you're curious about or wondering about?
Can you, I'm glad you mentioned the illustrated design standards that we've been talking about for some time. Can you speak to any kind of proposed plan for moving forward with that?
Right now, fact-finding, gathering some more examples. That one company that seems to have done a few, including Newton and so forth. I'm going to be reaching out to them to get a sense of costs, which I've already gotten from the person who used to work at Newton, who we've he's now in private sector, but he was on board when they went through their process. And, you know, the one thing that about that company that I seem to like, and again, this all has to go through proper procurement and RFP, and we just can't pick whoever we want because of the cost of it. But, you know, one thing that was, and I spoke with Giovanni about this, but she, I think, liked the splash look of their website as well. But some of their product looks a little generic, like it looks the same from place to place. So, you know, we'd have to be very hands-on, and that's what Newton said. He was very hands-on with them to make sure it's custom crafted, whether it's through text or terminology or imagery and graphics. I think there's something to be said for going with a company like that. I think we would be doing a lot of work with them on the development of it, but I'd also want to see it to be not, to use the word sustainable, but also adaptable. I wouldn't want to publish this and then 1 year later we then have to do a revamp because of something. I'd almost like to see it divided up into, each section stands alone as part of an overall document, I think would be the approach to take. So each one stands alone, you can give it to someone, or you can have it incorporated in the entire document. So you're not having to revamp an entire multi-page, product just to redo 2 sections of one standard, for example. So there's a couple of different ways to look at it. And I've been in touch with some other colleagues. I was, even when I was in New Orleans at the Trust Conference, was talking to some folks about that. And even speaking to the New Orleans folks who use the same company. So, and again, it's, I want to avoid the standardized look like it's just a factory that pumps out the same looking product for whatever community they're working in. So, but, there's a few others around that do this around the country, but again, it's I'm getting a sense of cost together and whatnot on that, and this could be a combination of historic board funds with maybe some partners chiming, with grants and whatever. But the main thing is now getting a handle on that and probably getting a few of the board members together at some point to form a working group for it, which would be nice in combination with the national park. Because once again, the document is going to reflect what we currently have, but there's a lot that can go into this. I mean, the great thing about our standards is they're 12 pages. I don't know, but they could use a lot of you lay out the standard in legalese, but then you have the yes, no, good, bad, suggestion, this, that, and it illustrate it so it really gives people a sense. Yeah. So, with the standards actually being a document as an appendix or something. So anyway, but it's something I've been wanting to do for years. We've talked about off and on, but I think now coming out of the 40th, it's sort of a legacy piece that we could probably do to get going on next year.
Yeah, that's great.
Would you like to take a moment on the person being memorialized?
Oh, Bob Malovich? Yeah. Bob started working in the DPD back in the early 1970s as a young planner, and he had several positions there, eventually becoming the planning and development director for several years. But and then afterwards, he stayed on as their federal home HUD CDBG coordinator. So he had a lot of positions over there, but also what's interesting to note is that when the board held its first meeting in February of 1984, the board appointed him as interim while they searched for a permanent administrator. And then when he was DPD director, he then sat on the board for a few years. So there's this legacy with him going back many years. And I worked with him very early on when I was here before he retired. And he was always very helpful because he was involved in getting the national park created and everything as well. And the idea for the Riverwalk was really his, seeing the sewer interceptor box culvert being used, and it eventually became reality with the arena and civic stadium project. But Giovanni probably knew him as a planning board member as well, because even after he'd retired, he became a member of the planning board up until he passed away.
Excuse me. Could we interrupt 1 second? You guys done? Okay, because one of the abutters had grabbed me alcohol make to bring with up.
Well, because the public hearing portion is closed, we don't really have an opportunity for official comment to be presented.
No, it's just
But
discrepancy in the plans versus what's written. But I didn't want to bring it up because I'm not saying I don't agree with the project. I can't make the writing equate to the drawings to what's being proposed. That's all.
Follow up.
Yeah, why don't you follow up with Steve, and we'll see what we can do.
Was she not aware that she had a chance to comment on that?
Not sure. I mean, she was here in the audience, so, and I
I
made
think
it
maybe
clear
she
that
didn't
there
want to
was.
say she was against, but,
Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
you know,
Yeah, but
but yeah,
I,
I think it was pretty clear that.
yeah, I do think it wouldn't be the right thing to reopen public comment after the
Right.
motion was already.
Right, after the,
So the idea was with Bob, his Councilor Mercier had actually, as I noted in here, to come up with the idea to name a portion of the Riverwalk at the family's request, but the Riverwalk is known by Milo Mills Riverwalk and Yankee Division Walkway, and it would just confuse matters. So Giovanni actually came up with the idea for the new pedestrian bridge over the Concord River, which the councilor liked and the family liked as well. So I worked with his wife, whom I've known as well for years, and the family wrote the text for the plaque. And it's produced and ready to be installed next April with hopefully an event the day after his birthday on May 5th. So I think it's nice that he'll have a portion of the Riverwalk named after him that was his idea, in a way.
yeah, it's a wonderful tribute.
Both the chair and I attended the statewide preservation conference in late September, and one of the sessions we were both in was one on what was it was the demolition ordinance. The what was it? What was the session? It was the
Well, there's there's some interest at the state government level in encouraging
salvage.
better practices in the demolition industry, basically, whereby encouraging the salvage of reusable materials, elements as buildings are being demolished, to try to find ways that we can find reuses for some of this material as opposed to sending it off to a landfill
Yeah.
somewhere.
It's a task force the DEP is heavily involved in.
Right. And there is a regular meeting that they've been holding over the last year or two to bring folks together to kind of talk generally about ideas and potential approaches or best practices that could be encouraged
Yeah,
throughout the
I mean,
industry.
twofold. I mean, reduce the waste stream, and also what materials can be recycled and reused, salvage-wise.
Yeah, and it's inspired us just personally at DCR. We're looking at ways to do that. We were in the process of demolishing some historic barn structures, and obviously there's some really old growth timbers and that are worthy of saving and potential reuse. Salvaging some of the sheathing. We have opportunities to reuse some of that in some of our other structures. So we're looking for ways that we can better coordinate that and find places to store that and find ways to promote it to others to make people aware that this material is available. We do have the ability to mill wood that we can tap into that as well. So,
Ironically, with Mass Mills here tonight, the Picker House building that was done back in 2012, a third of that was demolished, and some of the old growth yellow, southern yellow pine beams in there were actually picked by a restoration project in England, and they shipped them across the ocean to a building that dated to the 1400s, 1500s, and it needed fire-damaged wood, replace fire-damaged structure. And so some of the Massachusetts Mills Picker House beams ended up in a restoration project in England.
that's great. Nice.
And then at the Trust Conference in New Orleans, in addition to talking to some of the people there about the design guidelines and such, one of the sessions was interesting in that Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana spoke about upcoming tax legislation and the legislation that was passed in 2017, 18 or so that revamped the tax code where they were able to retain the historic credit. He's a strong advocate for the historic credit, and he made people aware that in a couple of years, provisions of that tax bill start to expire. So that whole thing with the taxes codes is going to be on the table again. And so he was basically informing people to be ready to, advocate for the tax credits, historic credits, and to find ways to even possibly enhance them. I mean, the tax credits are very much a bipartisan
Yeah.
thing. I mean, he's Republican out of New Orleans. He's one of the strongest voices for the out of Louisiana. He's one of the strongest voices for it nationwide. So anyway, but that's pretty much it. Unless people had some questions, anything further on what was in the report.
I saw that you did a tour of the City Hall clock tower and portions of the attic and basement.
Mhm.
I'd like to know when we can get.
Well, I think that's something Giovanni was going to go on, but she was stuck in a meeting. So yeah, we could probably arrange something in early spring before it gets too hot if people would like. So
I think I vitally need that perspective to be able to serve.
okay.
A question regarding a project that I don't see on the list, and that is just an update on the Smith Baker project. Is there any update on Smith Baker?
Yvonne, do you have anything that you can share?
She's still there. The green light is on.
Did she jump off?
Can't tell. You there, Yvonne?
Green lights were on before.
I think she's off. Oh well. Next month, I guess. I do know that they've got someone on board to look at structural, but that's about it.
Well, I realized there was a structural engineer to do an assessment of the condition, and I understand that has been completed.
Okay.
But I don't know what the upshot of it is.
Since it's not on the agenda, maybe just have it on for next month.
No, she went, whoops, she meant to go mute, hung herself up. Hold on. She says, tell everyone, whoops. We'll see if she calls back.
Well, while we're waiting, do you want to mention the subcommittee idea? Yes, something that Steve and I have been talking about is bringing back a structure that had been part of the board's organizational operations in the early years, where we had a number of subcommittees whereby various board members would participate in these committees that would focus on different elements of the operation of the board. And we thought that, particularly in the context of the interest in putting together the design standard illustration document, that would certainly be worthy of focused board involvement. And given the history that we've had with these subcommittees, we thought it would be a good idea to kind of bring back a focus group of those. One we can have this on the agenda at the next meeting to kind of flesh this out a little more. But
Hello.
Hi, Governor.
Yes.
You're back.
Okay, sorry about my fat fingers. I meant to hit mute and I hit hung up.
Aw.
Ioani, this is Gray Fitzsimons. We were reviewing the administrator's report and various projects, and there was one that I didn't see on the report, was the Smith Baker Center, and I just wonder if there's an update. I know that there was a structural engineer that the city contracted with to do a structural assessment. I wonder what became of that, and just in general, what update you might have on it, on the Smith Baker project.
Sure. So there are a couple things that have happened with Smith Baker. One, about the structural assessment. That work is ongoing. I actually just got a message from the folks. We hired a company called Gale and Associates, who we've done a lot of work with in the past. They come out, they did an external sort of walkabout, flew a bunch of drones, and then got into the building, toured it with the fire department. And so they're right now kind of in the weeds of the writing part of it. I think they intend to get a draft to their internal quality control people sometime in the next 2 weeks, and then I think we should see the report by like the second week of December is when I'm expecting to have that. Just to refresh people, the scope of that assessment was a structural assessment, obviously, of the building, and then we also asked for a cost estimate for what it would essentially take to mothball the building in a way to like secure it from further deterioration. So their cost estimates won't involve any sort of improvements of the structure other than potentially like trying to stop water penetration, for example. So that is ongoing. Like I said, I think mid-December is when I expect to see that. We have gotten some, after they flew the drones, they sent us some images that made us concerned about some of the roof edge along the entirety of the building, if I'm being honest. It's the reason why we've closed parking along the side of the building and the sidewalk along the Cardinal Parkway, but there are some areas that face onto Merrimack Street and along the edge that shares a driveway with the green school. That is causing us a little bit of concern. So our public works folks are going to be getting up there soon with the lift to likely remove some pieces of brick that are kind of hanging on by a thread. We also have requested Gale to provide us actually an estimate for what it would cost them to design a system, frankly, similar to what the boiler building has to wrap the building. And so that I'm waiting to see an estimate come in from them for that potential design work to see if that's something that the city might consider investing in as the conversation about what happens if the building continues. In addition to the structural assessment work, the city also applied for a technical assistance grant through Mass Development in the last state one-stop round of funding, and we were awarded that technical assistance. So Mass Development, not surprisingly, as a quasi-state agency, is really focused on housing development, and so the technical assistance is going to run 3 financial scenarios to see if there is a way to make the numbers work. So option 1 is a rehab of the building to housing. Option 2 is a rehab that preserves the front facade of the building. And then option 3 was assuming the building was not there and what could be developed per zoning. We are in very early stage conversations. Like, I don't have an MOA or anything executed with the folks from Mass Development. We're just having conversations. Essentially, the way it works is like Mass Development is the entity that the money goes through, and they'll hook communities up with people who they think have the skill set to provide this technical assistance. So in the next couple weeks, I anticipate I'll be meeting with the TA folks that Mass Development is going to connect us with. In my early discussions, they had said they were going to try to connect us with both a architect with experience on historic buildings and a cost estimator, 2 separate consultants that would be working together essentially to provide us this information. So I don't have an update as to like any of the timing for how this is going to play out. All I know is that sometime in the next couple weeks, Mass Development will be reaching out to me with the idea of who might work with us, and then we'll meet to discuss the project. And then if like they're, I don't really know how it works because they're actually going to be working for Mass Development, so I think they have to say like, yeah, we're interested in working with Lowell. And if that happens, then we'll execute the MOA and they'll start that work. So that one's a little further out, and I'm not quite clear how that's going to play out, but we're hoping that will at least give us a sense of like, if the plan is to see something happen, and if that could be housing, this is what it would take to make that work, which is more information, frankly, than we've had, other than just like anecdotal information based on, some of CBA's like older research when they were interested in the building. So hoping that this PA can kind of shed a little more light. And that's pretty much what we have underway for the Smithbaker right now.
Well, thank you for that. Just one final question, though. Regardless of whatever option might be pursued based on the grant project, the city is still in the position of basically shedding the property to a private concern. Is that correct? Whether not private, nonprofit, or for profit?
Yeah, I mean, the city definitely, we do not have the funding or capacity to take on a project that complex for municipal use. And so it just doesn't serve a specific municipal use at this point. And so our best bet, we believe, would be to transfer ownership to either a private or a nonprofit entity that would be willing to do the development. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that update, Giovanni. Great to see that we're pursuing a number of paths here to at least determine what might be feasible at that site.
Yeah.
Say, I don't want to prolong the meeting, but I do have one more question about an historic structure.
Sure.
And actually a very important one, and that is the Middlesex County Courthouse building that dates the original part from the 1850s. I just wonder, Giovanni, is there any update on the status of that property and that building?
Sorry, is that First Street or the Superior Courthouse building?
It's Gorham Street.
Oh, Gorham Street. So DCAM approached the city about whether or not we were interested, just based on their process. They reach out to communities. At this point, we haven't totally said no to DCAM, but we also haven't said yes. DCAM is interested in auctioning the property, the building, and all of the adjacent parking would go through an auction process. There was some concern on the council as to what that auction process could potentially result in, which is why we're still having some of these conversations with the state. There was special legislation that was passed related to both courthouses, which essentially allows the city to enter into what's called like a partnership, I think it's called a partnership sales agreement, whereby the city and DCAM essentially like sign an MOA where the municipality takes on responsibility of maintenance and security of the building, and then we work with DCAM to put the RFP out for the property, and then when and if there's a sale, depending on how fast that sale works, the distribution of proceeds, the community is made whole for their kind of carrying costs, and then there's like a distribution of like the potential source income based on the sales price. That took like an act of special legislation, and we're in like the weeds of that right now for the courthouse on Hurd Street. That's the one we've been mostly working with DCAM on. And so at this point, the city's kind of position is that we really want to get Hurd Street a little further along. And so we have not accepted responsibility. We have not signed an MOA with DCAM to take on the Superior Courthouse I've had some conversations with folks at DCAM to try to understand, like, you know, what does a sales partnership agreement really look like for communities when the sale takes a really long time? And they were very honest and said that, you know, communities basically only ever do sales partnership agreements on properties that they're very confident will move towards development very quickly. And so they haven't had one of these deals where the community's kind of been stuck holding on to the property for a long time. We, meaning the city, we are concerned about us taking on the potential long-term responsibility of maintaining that building, in addition to also trying to move Hurd Street through this process. So right now there hasn't really been any progress.
So if I may ask, as far as the Gorham Street Courthouse goes, who's currently responsible for the structural stability so we don't have another Smith-Baker situation?
DCAM, it's still, well, actually, officially, I think it might actually still be with the judiciary. But DCAM is essentially still, the state is still the owner and the responsible party for that courthouse.
Right.
Gray, I can tell you with regard to the Gorham Street Courthouse, both the chair and I went through there earlier this year, late last year,
Yeah, it's almost a year
with
ago.
Mass Historical and DCAM and the Park Service, and whether it's judiciary or DCAM, the heat's on and the lights are on, so they're maintaining it.
Thanks, Giovanni, for that as well.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, just to wrap up what I was saying earlier about the subcommittees, we can present some more details of what we have in mind. I think, in general, we're thinking about having one subcommittee focus on kind of general administrative issues about policy and procedures for the board, one that might focus on the budget and personnel issues related to, you know, annual reviews for Steve and hiring procedures and that kind of stuff. And then a third potential one focusing on our design standards that would obviously be involved in the development of this illustrated guideline document, but also look at, you know, occasional updates or clarification to those standards, which I think is worthy of doing from time to time. So that's what we have in mind, but we can discuss it at more length at a future meeting once we have a more defined proposal on the line. I just want to float that out to you for you to think about as we move forward. Any other questions or items for the board wants to bring up before we close? With that, I'll take a motion for just to close the meeting.
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All right. Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Ivani.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling in.